Hello, everyone, and welcome to Civic Platform. This is your host, Zuher Almusre. City challenges can't be limited to one episode, but we can mention it and highlight it to make it clear for everyone. We notice those challenges every day, and we need quick solutions to solve it and not just talk about it on every occasion. So, let's get started.
Hello, Robert, and welcome to Civic Platform. Thank you for accepting my invitation.
Sukhan, thank you very much for having me. Nima koma kantik tan saying mi anatani atawa pamtikuk.
You are very welcome. So, let's jump in very quickly to the city challenges, especially in Winnipeg. So, the first challenge the Manitobian face, the housing system. It's very long process and there is no too many option and it's too expensive.
Yeah, housing is a huge challenge for a lot of people right now in the city of Winnipeg. That's actually one of the reasons I'm running for mayor of the city. It's to actually help lift people up and make sure that we actually have families that are able to stay here long term. A lot of people move here and after a few years of trying to get ahead and not having either a very well-paying job or not being able to find good housing for their families in good neighborhoods, they end up moving away. And this is not a good thing for Manitoba's economy. We want to keep people here so that they can be successful. And so right now what we need to be doing here in Manitoba is ensuring that we apply properly to the federal government to obtain these funds. And there are other places such as in Ontario which has a much larger population, but they're applying for these funds and it's a first come first served basis on a lot of these federal funds to build more housing. And we need to make sure that we're doing the applications in a timely way, helping out the community groups who not only have an idea about wanting to build a housing project or get some housing, more affordable housing out for people and for families, but actually building it to complete the application then and to start the building of these things. And that I think is the most difficult thing, is actually just making sure we get the job done. A lot of people have ideas in the world, but then the problem is, and the issue is what we need to do is take those ideas and turn them into a reality. Take that vision and make it real in the world. And so this is one of the challenges that we face here in Manitoba. So have a lot of people with ideas, but now we need some type of leadership to actually get those ideas done. And housing is obviously there's many other issues related to housing. People need to be able to buy homes. They need to make sure it's affordable. And so we need to increase the number of homes which are available for families so they can start building their nest egg, building wealth. They're at their job, they want to be able to have a nice house to come home to at the end of the day, something for their children, for their relatives, and something which is, convenient and well situated in the city.
So is that like one of the reason why some people now choosing to travel out of the province and choose like another province?
Yeah, sometimes I think people, they face difficulties here in Manitoba and they think, well, if I try somewhere else, maybe it'll be a little bit better. Maybe I'll be able to get ahead a little bit more. The problem is this is a challenge actually generally right across the country. So for instance, if you go to Vancouver, houses are very, very expensive. They're still relatively cheap here or more affordable here in Winnipeg compared to other places. The challenges though that we face are the quality of jobs in the economy. And the political system actually, I know this is, you want to talk about housing, but a lot of these things are actually interconnected. So if you don't have a good quality job that pays enough, it's hard to buy a house. And it's hard to then have a family and support that family properly. And so the political system here actually doesn't have the federal government working with the province, working with the municipality, school trustees, Indigenous governments, newcomers, businesses, trying to create wealth. We actually don't coordinate and talk to each other. I spent 4 years as a member of parliament in Ottawa, and I was actually, the 4 years I was there as, just a new MP, member of parliament, it was very surprising how these people don't talk to each other. And when you try to get people to sit down, it can be sometimes very difficult because they're very busy, doing their own little thing, thinking about little things which are important, but instead of like coming all together and trying to coordinate our efforts to get things done. And so this is one of the things that I'm trying to do why I'm running for mayor, is to actually bring a little bit more coordination to this, take a leadership role as the mayor of the city to bring the federal government, the provincial government, city councillors, school trustees, Indigenous governments, the businesses together to think about like, how do we actually deal with housing? How do we get better jobs? And so to then go to Ottawa and say, well, we have an aerospace industry here in Manitoba, which is 10% of the aerospace planes, the building and manufacturing of planes, which is here in Manitoba. How do we grow that? How do we make sure that it's not just 10%, but maybe it's 11 or 12 or 15%, that we actually add really good, well-paying jobs and adding value to products, adding value to things that people do, build something instead of consuming stuff. We can't all work at McDonald's. Yeah. And we can't all work at Tim Hortons, though those are important jobs as well, but we need other types of jobs to support the people who are at that type of job.
I see. So you mentioned the Indigenous people, and we can see a lot of challenges they face in
Yes.
Manitoba. How we can describe this challenge for these people?
Well, it's interesting when you think of Indigenous peoples and newcomers. There's actually a lot of connection. Obviously, people come from around the world and they're Indigenous to some place. Mm-hmm. Some are forced out of their country, and others make a choice, an active choice with lots of education to come to Canada. But Indigenous peoples have actually never chosen to come to Canada. They were always here. Yeah. So Indigenous peoples will have some of the best and the brightest, and also people who have great challenges in their life. But not only that, we also have issues related to colonization, to the way that the government was treating them. Indigenous peoples in Canada did not have the right to vote until 1960. Mm-hmm. That's in the lifetime of my own father. When he turned 18, he was not allowed to vote. He was not a Canadian citizen. Indigenous peoples became Canadian citizens in 1960 with the rights and the privileges that come with that type of citizenship. And, people sometimes think, oh, well, it's rather strange to think that, you were born in a country, but you're not allowed to be a citizen of that country. But that's the reality. And there's a lot of racism that was related to that. And right now, Canada's trying to get through it. They're trying to work on something called reconciliation, building on what was supposed to be a very positive relationship of sharing between Indigenous peoples who were here and newcomers, mainly European settlers, trying to build a new country and, share the resources of the land. And we kind of moved away from that for about 100 years, 150 years. And now we're starting to think about like what that relationship is going to look like. And so we have a lot of Indigenous peoples. We could talk about a lot of the problems, if you want, that Indigenous peoples face, but there are also some really great successes. We're starting to get more education. I have a PhD. In my family, not only was I the first to have a bachelor's degree, but also a master's degree and a PhD. This is quite a success and change in family fortunes from one generation. And I expect my children to achieve as much as I have. That's the expectation in the house, that they're also going to go on and complete and get good education so that they can be contributing members of our society. And we can all live together, live together well.
Robert, if we can speak about the homeless people.
Yes.
Why we still see in the country like a very high of education, very if when we mention the name of Canada, the first thing crosses our mind, we are in the top. Why we still have like a homeless people in our streets?
Oh, this is a very good question. Why do we have homeless people in the streets in Canada? I think the issue for the last 30 years, at
And
the city
especially,
level.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but especially in this very hard winter.
Yes, they're out. The homeless are outside even in the winter. People die actually.
Yeah.
We have people, many dozens of people that die in either bus shelters or just out in the cold because of the cold, because they can't find shelter. This is actually one of the greatest tragedies of Canada because people do not have access to good housing. But it's also a tragedy because people don't have access to mental health supports and addiction treatment. In the city of Winnipeg, we spend far above the Canadian average in trying to police the homeless population, trying to make it safe, because people in the suburbs are often scared of the homeless people. And in fact, actually, the issue here is actually not one which should be dealt with by police, but actually it's a mental health, it's a health issue. So it should be the healthcare professionals dealing with it. But if you go around, let's say you were homeless, and once when I was the MP, I actually had a young lady come to see me when I was the MP, and she said she had just arrived in the city 6 weeks earlier, and she'd run in with the wrong crowd. Someone had given her drugs. She started using drugs. She was forced into prostitution to pay for the drugs. And she wanted help to get back home, but also to get addictions treatment before she went back home, because it was very, rather dishonorable, she felt, to go back home. And so I started with her making phone calls on a Friday afternoon when she had come to see me. And after 2 hours, we were unable to find any services for her.
Oh my goodness.
So I had to tell her after 2 hours, I'm afraid I just can't help you, and she was getting jittery because she needed her next hit of drugs. And she was like, well, I have to go because I'm not feeling very comfortable right now. Mm-hmm. And, if you go see the police can't help unless she commits a crime. The women's shelter can't take her because they have children in there and they're not an addictions treatment facility. You can't take her to the hospital because she doesn't have a mental health challenge. She's addicted. So what do? Where does she go? There was no place for her to go except to be on the streets until she commits a crime or does something wrong. And this is, for me, one of the most terrible things is we have hundreds of organizations who want to do really great things. We have lots of governments that want to do lots of great things with very smart people who really care, but no one's coordinating anything. And this is the challenge. I have never seen the feds talk to the province, talk to the municipality really on these issues, and then follow up with an action plan afterwards to actually make sure that people get the treatment that they're looking for. Right now, it's 9 months to get addictions treatment. Mm-hmm. Imagine, you have to be on the street for 9 months before you can get addictions treatment. So the chaos it causes in our city is people will stay in bus shelters. And people might think it's not really important. You can't carry on your life and ignore this issue. But we live in Canada, one of the greatest nations in the world, very, very rich, in the top 3 consistently in the United Nations rankings for one of the best countries to live in the world. And we can solve this. We can actually look after people properly. We don't have to have people living in the streets. We can find them the mental health treatment. We can find them addictions treatment. We can make sure that the police don't have to deal with it and that they can deal with other criminals, the things that they should be dealing with on a daily basis, and not trying to police the homeless. For instance, the police, there's been a lot of criticism lately of police here in Manitoba. The police are trying to do their very best, but they're not equipped to deal with a lot of these social issues. They're not social workers.
I see.
They're for the law enforcement. Someone steals a bike or steals a car, they're going to go find where your car is and charge that person with a crime, and hopefully through the justice system make sure that they don't steal again. But to deal with someone who's sleeping in a bus shelter, how do you deal with that? Are they committing a crime? Not really. We can't take them to prison for sleeping in a bus shelter. So what do we do? And we haven't found a solution to that. And the reason is, once again, people are not talking. There is no coordination between the leadership of all the levels of government. And because there's no coordination, we can't make a difference, even though we all want to make a difference.
There is another idea. I got it from one of my teachers before, and she said to me, if you see someone homeless, don't give him money. even if you give him $1. No, give them like water or food, because these people maybe will take that money and buy some drugs. So this is like I can see like a Canadian culture. They didn't give these people any money. So sometimes maybe they don't like what I offer them. Maybe they need to buy a jacket, and he couldn't buy with like a dish or a pizza. He couldn't buy a jacket even if he go to like a cheaper market. So he needs some money to save himself from the cold, or he need a new shoes. How this is like accurate? So don't give the homeless money.
Well, there are certainly some that will use that money to buy drugs. The issue is if they don't have money to buy the drugs that was given to them, then they will have to get the money some other way. And that might lead to them breaking into a garage or prostitution. And I've had, when I was the member of parliament, again, I had people come into my office who needed a couple dollars. And you're faced with the dilemma of how to, like, if they don't have the money, they're going to have to go out and do prostitution for even a couple dollars.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, maybe that's not a good choice. Maybe we can get some help. And you have to try and find them the assistance. And it is very, very difficult. I don't think there's a good solution. Usually I also like to give out things that people, might want to use right away. I like to give out cigarettes to people because they can, sometimes people think, oh, you give cigarettes, Robert, that's not very healthy. But, I think sometimes people need a little bit of pleasure when they're on the streets. Just, cigarettes, some people do enjoy it, and, just lifts them up a little bit, because it's very, very hard to live on the streets. Right. When I was a kid, actually, I used to live on the streets.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Yeah, me and my mother would call it camping, but we would camp out in city parks. I remember once as a kid, about the age of my, younger than my daughter, who's 10, so around the age of 8 or 9, we spent the whole summer camping from May, June, July, August, September, into October, camping in city parks. And it was, by the time we get to October, it's very, very, very cold.
Yeah.
And I remember asking my mom, like, when are we going to school? She'd say, well, and she'd be crying. Well, I guess we'll, I don't want to ask anyone for help, but I don't want to go on welfare. I'm too proud for that, but I guess that's what we're going to have to do. And she was very upset. And she faced her own mental health challenges that are hard to find support. Often when you're a single mom and you don't have a lot of people there to, help you out. This is why, family is sometimes so important, but I understand what people are going through when they're on the streets. Yeah. Maybe a little less because I was a kid, but I still can empathize in a, pretty well in a great way. And people think, wow, a child was homeless in Canada. Yeah, it happens. The streets can be paved, and in some places, you have Alberta, which has lots of money, but sometimes there's just not enough. There's not enough coordination between governments to make sure that people get the resources they need to be successful.
Robert, one of the biggest challenges also we face here in Winnipeg, the daycares. All the families need daycares.
People want to work. People need to work.
Father and mother work, and they don't know where they have to keep their kids. And when you go for a good rate for daycare, they have a very long waiting list.
Yes, of course.
So how we can solve this kind of challenge?
Well, I think the federal government's investing more money into daycares, but once again, I think it's an issue of ensuring that Manitoba applies for those funds, and they have support from the city in various locations to make it as affordable as possible for the daycares to operate. Not all the facilities of the city are used all the time. So some of them are used in the evenings when, children from elementary school and families are more available. But during the day, some of these facilities sit empty, and, maybe we should be using them for daycares and to make sure the price is as low as possible. Because, when you have to pay for a location, a house or a building, that's where it gets very expensive.
Yeah.
And that's where you start adding on all the extra costs because it's related to heating, the water usage, it's related to, the actual physical infrastructure, how much the land costs to build it on, and that's where it gets very expensive, the commercial fees.
Yeah.
So the city has a big role to play in trying to make sure that you can actually get these daycares built or, operating. And they can do a partnership. They should be doing partnerships.
Yeah. And the other challenge I can say, the communities face, especially the Arabic communities, if we can say, or the Muslim community, they face Islamophobia, for example. They're looking for an Arabic schools for, now they are, the communities, it's become large and they need to add a subject, Arabic subject in the schools. I don't know if that will be possible one day here in Canada, but they need their own school. So, and the other communities too, they face some challenges. What's your concern about the communities in Winnipeg today?
Well, I think obviously any type of hate or discrimination is wrong. I love going down to the mosque. Even as an Indigenous person from here in Canada, I love participating because I come from Red Pheasant Cree Nation. I'm Cree. And I actually love going down to the mosque, the central mosque, and hearing the imam and the khutbah, because I learned so much, right? Yeah. And often I take what I heard there and I bring it back to our ceremonies and I'll share it with my family and talk about it with my children. And, I learned about this today, I learned about this, and then, they increases their knowledge and that's good for children. Now, but related to that, beyond just simply, participating, it's actually important for people to keep a connection to their culture. Because if you don't know who you are, it's hard to then build into the future. And I think Canada is actually going to be much stronger if people maintain not only their culture, but their language. Because that language allows you to connect with the world. So, for instance, if your children continue to speaking Arabic and your grandchildren, hopefully your grandchildren, then that will allow them one day when they have jobs to then maybe we'll do business in Dubai or in Egypt or in Morocco. But if you can't speak Arabic, you have to find someone else to do that work. And that will allow Winnipeg to become much better at trading and being connected around the world. And it's the same thing for people from Chinese, people who are from the Philippines, from Africa. Those connections are extremely important to building wealth and to making sure that that we have good paying jobs. And culture and language are so important to that. Knowledge. Without knowledge, you can't have anything.
You mentioned the children, and I read for you before an article about the children and their future in Winnipeg. So what is your message for the children specifically?
Oh, wow. For the kids? Well, part of my platform has always actually been about supporting children. So we actually have something called the Child-Friendly City Policy, which is a UNICEF, so the United Nations Children and it's a model which was developed many years ago. There's no English city in Canada which is applying it, but they do have it in Quebec and they have it around the world. And what it does is ensuring that all city policy, all actions of the city are looked through the eyes and the needs of children. Because if our children are successful, we're likely to be successful because we're thinking about their long-term development. If the parents have jobs, what can we do to make sure that families are successful so that kids are successful? And it's related for me back to an Indigenous philosophy of my people, which is 7 generations. We don't just think about the generation today, we think about the 7 generations that are going to come after us. So very, very long term, and how we actually get there. And what actions are we taking today to make things better? And I think, often politicians, we think in very short little cycles, 4 years here, 4 years here, 4 years here. And I don't think that's very good. I don't think that's good for society. I think we need to really have a long vision of where we want to get to and how we're going to get there, and allow the politicians even who come after you the ability to hook into that vision so that it continues to improve and to get better. and to make the policy and the vision actually more inclusive.
Yeah.
And something that they can say, this is something that we need to fight to make sure that we push forward. Like, we think about children. We're a winter city. There, we have a few pools, but if you go to Calgary, they have these beautiful aquatic centers in the winter that children can go into that make waves, that have slides, keep them active. As much as everyone loves to be outdoors in minus 40 weather, we actually love to be, we like being indoors. And Calgary, Edmonton have these facilities that they built years ago by the city, and we don't have one here in Winnipeg, not one.
This is like very tough. For me, as a father, I don't have any choice, or I don't want to be like very hard on the city, but I have a very limited options.
Yeah.
I don't know where I have to take my kids.
Yeah, and you also don't have, sometimes if a lot of families don't have a lot of money, you want to be able to afford something. In Calgary, it's part of the public pools facilities where it's a couple dollars you get in and you can go for an evening of swimming with waves, and the kids have a really good time. They're active, they're moving. If we built this here in Winnipeg, it'd probably be a private company. That's what probably what people would suggest. I would suggest doing it in public, making sure that it's owned by the government, so we keep the cost down, so we can make it affordable for families, because people don't have a lot of money.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's very hard because, especially if we, and I spoke with the city before about there is no advertising enough for the places. Like for if I want to take my kids to this neighborhood because they have a good playground or like a water fall or something nice. We say it like water splash
pads. Yes.
Yeah. So we don't know where it's located, what I should be right in the Google map to find or reach these places. So this is very hard also. Like there is a limitation.
The city doesn't share information enough.
Yeah. We need like more information so we can have a variety and we can know. Like this weekend, I want to go with my family to this park or to this playground, so the kids will have fun. For me, I found all these facilities by myself. When I go to buy something, I find it like by chance.
Just by luck. That's not, but that's not how we should be leading life all the time. We should actually have some coordination, I think.
Yeah.
And often that doesn't actually cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
And the governments can, share information very inexpensively.
Yeah. Robert, today Manitoba and whole Canada, all the world, they face a very high inflations. Everything now, it's double. Grocery, gas, everything, and the wages, it's same. There is no increasing here, everywhere. So why now we face this challenge in our world and specifically here, and how we can deal with this challenge?
Wow, what a tough question. Because this is actually, a lot is related to the pandemic, from my understanding, for instance, because the supply chain, someone stopped manufacturing something, all of a sudden there's a scarcity or less of one product. All of a sudden everyone wants that product, the price goes up. Yeah. And at the beginning of the pandemic, I don't know if you remember, the price of the gasoline came right down because no one was driving cars. They couldn't give it away. They used to have tankers of gasoline sitting outside, ready to go into cars. And then, it's been picking up, but now there's such demand for it that the prices are going sky high, and it seems to be, for the moment, very out of control. I think the issue, though, mainly is actually for families surrounding, can they afford everything? And I think the governments really need to be ensuring that, food remains very affordable for families. So products like milk, eggs, breads, the basic staples that are sold that families need to eat is still affordable. That public transportation is accessible and more affordable, so people can get around. And that that we continue to make sure that housing is affordable. And we try and keep down prices as much as possible. And the governments use their ability to keep prices low in various areas. Like if if the government does nothing, people are going to, especially with housing as an example, people will start raising their prices, and all of a sudden, you can't find that apartment. Yeah. And then what are you going to do? And especially if your jobs remain very low, we're going to have problems. Yeah. So we need to increase the quality of the jobs that people have access to and the amount that they earn. Because if they don't have good quality jobs, what are you going to do? You can't do anything.
Yeah. And now I hear from my neighborhoods, many concerns about what we can do. Now we couldn't take a vacation, for example, because we spend a double of our money in previous years, previous months. So there is no a solution for them, and I heard many concern about from the people who works with the minimum wage as well. So before they their expenses, their gas, it costs this amount, and now it goes double amount.
Yeah.
So
very expensive.
And the income, it's the same. There is any a plan or any news for in upcoming days or months to increase this minimum wage in Manitoba, or?
Well, I have heard that the provincial government is actually planning on increasing the minimum wage, but are they going to increase it enough? That's a very good question. I don't know. In Canada, we have the federal government, then we have the province, and then we have the city, and one of the issues is they have their own jurisdiction that they deal with, meaning they don't, you deal with these things like the federal government, international affairs and national defense and the military. The province deals with healthcare and education, and then the city deals with roads and lights and public parks and things, and libraries and housing issues. And then, sometimes there's not enough coordination and discussion about what we can all do together to make things more affordable for people. And that's, that's one of the things I want to do if I become mayor, is actually just have these conversations between our leaders to make sure that we're, all working in the same direction. What can we all collectively do?
I see. And one of the challenges is the construction. Every year we have to make again the construction again and again. Why it's low quality? Why we didn't make it for a years? Why the same road we have to fix it every year?
That is a good question. I think one of the issues that we face is a lot of it's actually not well maintained. So once there's a little tiny crack, the water starts getting down, and then it expands with ice, because ice expands, and then it starts making the hole larger and larger. Yeah. But what we need to do is come along once in a while, the city needs to, and put some money into actually just looking after it, making sure that that crack is filled up right away with a product. There's lots of products that we could be doing to keep the roads looking good longer, and which would be less expensive in the long term. But we don't do that. So really, it's actually maintenance. It's like buying a house and thinking to yourself, you know what? I buy a house, I build a brand new house, but I'm not going to touch it for 25 years. Yeah. And even there's a little crack in the ceiling, there's a little hole, something happened, I'm not going to repair it, I'm going to let it drip. At some point you're going to have problems with your house. And it's the same things with our roads, our sidewalks, our lights, our buildings. If you don't look after it a little bit, put in a little bit of investment, it's going to deteriorate, and we're going to have to get a new one. And that's what's happened.
The people want to enjoy the summer and the traffic, and they couldn't, we have 3 lanes, and we have to use only 1 lane. So this is not the good time for us to enjoy the summer in our city, because it's really a season of construction everywhere. And the same roads, last year we make that road for example, in Waverly, and the second year next summer we fix the same road. So this is really hard for us to
and they take a long time to fix it.
Exactly.
To be honest, actually, I've never been able to understand why it takes so long. I'm looking forward to the opportunity of being mayor and asking harder questions about why, for instance, in Montreal, as an example, They show up to fix the bridges at 9 p.m. at night, and by 6 a.m. they have to be off that bridge, and that section is now repaired and they've moved on. That allows the traffic to continue flowing over the bridge. We don't do that here. Now I think we and then you come along and everything's blocked off and there's no one working. I think that makes people upset.
Yeah.
And obviously workers want to be able to work and have time off and work 9 to 5, but sometimes there are jobs which are so important that they should maybe be doing them later at night when less people are out and about, especially in the summer. It's warm, it's comfortable, got lots of city lights to light things up so they can see what they're doing.
Oh, it's a lot. My last question, Robert, and thank you very much for answering all my questions. This is the last one about the health, especially when we go to the emergency room. Waiting list for like 7 hours sometimes in some cases. So I prefer if I can treat myself at home better than sit close to someone. Maybe he have symptoms or he is allergic. Maybe he will pass me anything in during this 7 hours, right? So I'm going to treat myself, but I don't have the opportunity very quickly, and I have to suffer extra 7 hours, and I have to wait very long line up. So why we have something like that? And especially Canadian hospital and the health, we are in the top in the world. We did a very
yes, I know.
Surgery.
We got yes, of course we have some of the best healthcare in the world. But the problem is that there are not enough family doctors. So really, what people should not be going to the emergency ward to get services. They should actually be going to their family doctor or a drop-in clinic. But the problem is there's not enough of them. And this is a problem of the provincial government trying to make sure that they actually have enough services. I know that the feds have been trying to invest more money. I know the province is trying to invest more money and get more doctors, but we also have a huge shortage of nurses. And there's issues related to allowing nurses to do more diagnostics, to help out, looking at patients, to give them advice about what it is they should be doing in their treatments and making sure they're helping them properly, and without the supervision of a doctor, because a lot of them are very, very smart and have a lot of education, nurses today.
When you mention about the doctors and nurses, we have a lot of immigrants come with this very high qualification.
Oh yeah, I know.
They spend years to be qualified to work in Canada. It's very difficult, more exams. Why we make it complex if we need it?
That is a very interesting debate. If you speak to the people who control who becomes a doctor, the colleges of doctors or the professionals, they set up barriers to prevent people from entering the profession. They say really it's because they want to ensure a very high quality. Everyone has the same level of training. So it makes sense. But at the same time, by putting barriers which make it so difficult to become qualified or to take those tests to ensure that they have that knowledge, they're also able to prevent or create scarcity. So that means that their wages will remain high. Because all of a sudden, if there's 10,000 doctors are allowed to practice medicine in Canada, the salaries are going to go down because there's more people, because the governments will only spend a certain amount of money on doctors. So it becomes a very, it becomes a question of maintaining salary to a large degree.
Yeah, but it not make sense because
it doesn't make sense for you, but for the doctors who control who becomes a doctor, it makes sense to them in the long term because they want to protect, their income and have a good quality of life.
But for the other people, like if we have to stay for 7 hours in the emergency room for this only one reason, so at least I don't want to say like just anyone come from outside, he will be qualified to work in Canada.
Yeah.
But if we make it just a little bit easier, like I don't want to study again all my doctor or like 4 or 5 years.
I'm sure there must be a test that people can take that prove their qualification levels and their knowledge levels, which should be fast tracked. But once again, people want to put up some barriers.
Yeah.
I understand. My wife is a dentist, but she has a dental degree from another country. she's qualified to practice in another area related to dentistry, but not to be an actual dentist.
Yeah.
She has to retake everything, but they only give the exam once a year.
Yeah.
And she also has to then go into a clinical setting. And so the qualification and the time lost, so she prefers to just practice in another area rather than doing what she was originally trained to do at a very high level. Like, she's
I hope like one day it will be easier for them, and we solve all the challenges to see our city.
Well, I think it's so frustrating actually to be someone who comes with a high level of education, you've worked so hard, and then someone to say, you know what, as much as we love you having that education, we don't want that resource used here. And you kind of go, well, why not? Think of all the great things I could do if I was able to do this job that I trained so many years. Yes,
this
of course.
is what I'm doing all my life, and I choose Canada here to have a good life for me and my kids, and I have to work in something they call like a transition job until, and you have to be patient, and you have to wait, you have to build your Canadian experience. I know it's very important, and I understand the system, but for me, I don't want to waste
why waste your life? Why should the life be wasted? And all that knowledge.
Exactly, because I have the same things what I know, and sometimes my quality it may be higher than here.
Yeah.
No offense, but really I have opportunity in my back home or my home country to educate from very high universities, and I spend a lot of money there. So why I have to do it again from the zero level?
Yeah.
So I hope one day that process looks easier.
Apparently it's getting a little bit better, but they need to speed up.
Yeah. Robert, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate your help and all your answers. We reached the end of our episode. I hope you like it. Thank you very much. Please, if you like the episode, like, share, and subscribe to see our upcoming episodes.